Recording in progress.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone here and call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of minutes, both from September 12th and October 10th. Has anyone had an opportunity to read the September 12th minutes? If so, I'd accept a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
No changes. Go ahead, Mr. Garrett.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Goebel?
Aye.
Mr. Horvath?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Then the minutes from October 10th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thanks.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Goebel?
Aye.
Mr. Horvath?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Economic Development Area updates. Mr. Shalio.
Yeah, so we're gonna start with the budget.
Okay, thank you.
In your packets this morning, you will find some updated financial documents. The first page is expenditures by vendor for the month of October, so you can see totals for each vendor out of each of the economic development areas. And then a breakdown of each of the transactions over the last month and the balance statements for where the accounts are as of November 8th when I pulled this report.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any questions on any of the transactions.
In the in the new Carlisle Development 2, what is the $225,000 building and structure that we carried over from last year and haven't spent? Is that for the for the garage possibly?
It was not for the garage. That money has already been given and set
Okay.
aside to them. That was money that was set up in the budget. It hasn't been used at this point because I don't believe there was a purpose for that particular line item, so I can't, we'll look at that for next year and see, but.
It was just unusual seeing it carry forward.
I do believe, Dennis, that there was an initial PO that was cut for the highway garage that did carry over in January. That ended up being canceled and a
You're
new,
correct.
just straight payment into it was done. So that might have been why there was that carryover in there.
And then I assume for the GM Project Flex Fund, that $1 million will just carry over to next year and we'll budget and look at.
Yep, it'll just have to be reappropriated every year.
Okay.
But, yep,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Is there any other questions or comments? No? Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is 2024 calendar, and it's the draft for discussion every year. In November, we send around the draft agenda or draft calendar. So there are 12 meetings listed. At this point in time, none of these fall on a holiday, so they're the regular second Tuesday agenda or meeting cadence. So at this point in time, if there's no issues with these, then we would put it back on your agenda to vote on in the December meeting.
They seemed fine,
Okay.
so. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 2024 budget update. We will have a draft budget at the next meeting, and we'll have some discussion about that at the meeting in December, and then we'll look to vote on that in January. So that's where we are for that.
All right.
The next item on the agenda is under New Carlisle Economic Development Area, Professional Service Agreement. So the first agreement is an addendum 1 or amendment 1 to a Donahue and Associates contract. The contract was approved back earlier this year as part of work on the water treatment plant, the potable water treatment plant in New Carlisle, or actually served and managed by the town of New Carlisle. This services agreement under Addendum 1 will actually do some additional water modeling for some some projects that will require additional water, GM site, some other suppliers, some other projects in that area. So this is an addendum or an amendment to that contract. The amendment's in a lump sum amount of $147,400 and not to exceed lump sum amount of $147,400, bringing the total contract to $206,100. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And we spoke with IDEM, and it's just part of that whole process.
So this contract will address those issues that they would have or other agencies at the state or level would have, but certainly gives us better information as we look forward to moving forward with water projects in the New Carlisle area.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
No discussion. Mr. Garrett?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Goble?
Aye.
Mr. Horvath?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next item is a professional service agreement from Christopher B. Berg Engineering for pre-demolition services for a residential property located at 56102 Larison Boulevard in New Carlisle. The county will be closing on this property on November 17th. The total fee for this services shall not exceed $12,000. Staff is requesting commission approval for this agreement. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I do have a question. We're using Christopher Burke. In the past, we've just gone and got separate appraisals. Obviously, they're doing a few more services. I just wondered why I have no problem with it, but why we're using Christopher Burke versus just going to appraisal
The
companies.
properties that we previously demoed this year on Larison and on Douglas Road, we used Christopher Burke. So we're very familiar with the
Correct.
processes and what they offer, which is, I believe, why we seeked a bid from them for the services they provided earlier on other properties.
Yeah, so this isn't for acquisition, this is just for the demolition services. So we've already done appraisals, we'll acquire on the 17th. Yeah.
So we're
and
closing
then-
on Friday.
So what we've learned is that if we don't get this process started before acquisition, then the house will sit for a while, become a nuisance property, and this, and then the one on Douglas that we'll talk about here in a little bit. We want to get ahead of the curve, so when the people have moved out, we're ready to go with demolition.
It was really the one on Douglas that I was thinking,
Yeah.
wondered why we're doing it that way. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Goble?
Aye.
Mr. Horvath?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next item is a request for permission to advertise a procurement bid package. So as part of the work that we're doing for the GM site, we have had two prior actions where we've done specified purchasing. So purchasing of some valves and then filters for the water treatment plant improvement project. This is a procurement bid, so it's a little different, where instead of going with a sole source provider, we're actually going to bid work. This work is not as specific, it's not as vendor specific. So we have three divisions that we're looking to do with this bid. There's piping and fittings, there's an emergency generator or generators, and then a new water storage tank. All three of these pieces are required for the work that needs to be done for the GM project and for some other work. Because of lead times on all of these work and because of the commitments on the other end when the work has to be completed, we're doing this bid early. We anticipate getting bids back. So the letter in the packet says we'd advertise, I think it's this Friday, next Friday, and then would open bids at your December 12th meeting. So what we have to do then from a timing standpoint is make a determination when we could actually award those bids, assuming that we received qualified bids that will work. Because we're gonna run into a cash flow management issue at some point, depending on what the bid numbers come in and what the costs are. So we're doing this work now to get the work out on the street so that we can get the information so that we could be in a position as we move forward with several of the pieces of the project, we can have this equipment ready to be delivered so that it can be installed once we do the construction bid later. It'd be sometime in January that we would do the construction side of the bid. So if there's any questions, again, all we're looking to do is get your permission to advertise for the bids to be opened up on the 12th of December. Any questions? I would be happy to answer them.
Do we have a database, in addition to putting this advertisement out, do we have a database of companies that do this type of work that automatically get the proposal sent to them?
So in addition to the qualified bidders, I mean, obviously, we'll advertise in all the regular places that we do advertise, but then we also on our website have a section where we put bid postings and things like that. But through the engineering contracts or contractors that we have, we'll certainly make sure it gets to the right places to get that bid out.
And area contractors are able to sign up, and many have, to our website, so when we post one, they automatically get the email that it's been
Yeah, that's what I
posted.
was referring to. Okay,
Yep.
perfect, thanks.
Probably a foolish question. The emergency generator, is that something that if there's an issue, they'd bring it in, or something that's going to be a permanent part of the?
So it'd be a permanent fixture as part of the project. So, right now, at the lift station at Larison Road, for example, there's not an emergency, generator. That lift station really only services R&L carriers. And not that we wouldn't want to see R&L carriers have service, obviously we would want to see that. But that wasn't a requirement when that lift station was built. Now that's just a general requirement on lift stations when they're built, especially lift stations at capacity. The Larison lift station is going to have to be rebuilt anyway to handle the capacity for the GM site, R&L carriers, suppliers, things like that. So certainly something that we need to do. And right now, that's estimated a 12-month lead time. So again, part of the reason why we need to get that out on the street so we can get some numbers on that, so.
I'm kind of curious, this might be a simple question as well, but is this coming from DLZ or is it coming from the county?
So DLZ has prepared the bid for us on our behalf. It'll actually be the county that's the
Soliciting
bidder
the
for
bids.
that, so
Okay.
yeah. But because they're tasked with doing those pieces of the project, that's why it came on their letterhead and kind of under their direction.
Okay.
So is there a motion to give permission to advertise a procurement bid package?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Goble?
Aye.
Mr. Horvath?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We'll make sure that. Just want to make sure Dick wasn't trying to get in online or something and hadn't been able to do that, so I don't. So next item on the agenda is resolution number 2023-18. So this is the resolution of the St. Joseph County Redevelopment Commission confirming resolution number 2023-15 of the Redevelopment Commission, which approved amendments to the declaratory resolution and economic development plan for the New Carlisle Economic Development Area and other related matters. So over the last several weeks, the Redevelopment Commission has been working through a process to amend the New Carlisle Economic Development Area. New Carlisle Economic Development Area has existed since 1987 in one form or fashion. And so what I'd like to do is just run through a quick PowerPoint here, just kind of some updates of where we are. So kind of the steps to approval, the most recent steps to approval. Back in May of this year, May and June, the Redevelopment Commission, Board of Commissioners, and County Council approved the development agreement for the project. The development agreement wasn't signed on the GM deal until August 29th. And so then, after August 29th, we had comfort that it was time to move forward to secure the plan amendment changes we needed to make to be able to bond for the General Motors project, the improvements that needed to be made. We started that process on the 13th of October with the Redevelopment Commission, went to the Area Plan Commission, then the Board of Commissioners, presentation on a council committee evening on October 24th. We had an open house last night, and we'll talk about the open house. And then November 14th, which is today, we have the hearing on Resolution 2023-18. And then depending on your action, then the council will hear that bill tonight. It'll actually be a resolution tonight in front of the council. So as part of the process, we made the determination from a best business practice standpoint to add all the property owners within the area, the existing area, as well as the expansion areas to the acquisition list. That brought the total of properties to 309 property owners. A notice is required to be sent to any property being added to the acquisition list. So those letters all went out November 1st. They're required to get notice 10 days prior to the hearing. So November 14th, today is the public hearing, so notice was sent out with enough time. County letters were delivered within the county city building, so 25 letters were hand-delivered here within the building. We took photos of all the letters that went out, and to this point, we've only received 5 returns out of the 284 letters that were mailed out. Of those 5, One of the properties has been demolished, and it's actually a property we're working to acquire. The other 4 are properties that are in the area, but not sure why the mailings didn't go through. As part of the requirement, we're required to put the formal notice of the public hearing in the packet. And as well, we added a property owner letter that talked about not only the public hearing, but also just kind of the process, what was going to happen, information about the acquisition list process and things like that. We also then put on our website, we created a specified web page for the plan amendment. So at sjcindiana.com/2023 NCEDA plan. So there were information, copies of the maps, copies of the prior presentations, all on the website. During the period of time that the letters went out and yesterday, we received 3 emails about asking questions about the plan amendment process, and then 4 calls, so prior to last night's meeting. Last night, we held a public meeting at the New Carlisle Olive Township Public Library, about 150 attendees. We're still going through the attendance list, trying to figure out who was in, who was out of the area, but we think it was a pretty fair mix. We got good news coverage, so there were a lot of people there, we think because of the media coverage as well as the notice. So I had a lot of opportunity. Frank and Terry and Shelley and I all were at the meeting, covered different aspects of the meeting, and had the opportunity to talk to people. A lot of good conversation with a lot of people, specifically people who lived on State Road 2, people who lived on US 20, some of the people on Willow Road that now are I guess, have some complications with travel movement because of the GM site and because of the vacation of Fillmore Road. So we learned a lot, had a lot of good conversation with a lot of people last night. But again, the meeting was really targeted trying to get information to and from the property owners within either the expansion areas or within the existing economic development area. One thing I think the 3 of us would all say is that there were a lot of people we talked to that said, wow, I didn't know I was in the area. You know, and I've been in the area since 1997. I didn't know that. So it was a good opportunity for some feedback. Just from a historical overview, again, I mentioned earlier that the planning area's existence since 1987, originally established around the Iron Tech Iron Coat site, specifically to set up a TIF increment area to collect revenue off the Tech and Coat project, to pay for the construction of water and sewer lines and a water plant. Area was expanded in 1997, and then again in 2008, and most recently in 2016. In 2016, we split the area into 2 allocation areas. Area number 1 was the area that was collecting property taxes, and area number 2 was the area with the energy center that would be collecting property taxes over the next 25 years. So that was the split into 2 allocation areas. And at that point in time, we added to the acquisition list 19 properties that we identified that could be part of either a rail project or part of the Nespa-Johnny Ditch relocation project. So at that point in time, prior to that, no properties were on the acquisition list. So in 2016, we added 19 properties to the area. So the plan amendment process really is geared on doing 3 things: modifying the existing boundaries, modifying the allocation areas, and modifying the acquisition list. So when we look at the area as it exists right now today, 237 parcels, about 5,400 acres, and then 3 allocation areas, or 2 allocation areas, 1 expansion area, presently make up the development area. We're looking to do a western expansion of the area. There's 6 different western expansion areas. Each of those has a different reason for being added to the area. 2 of those are just basic corrections. So expansion 2 and expansion 3 are corrections based on having previously been in the wrong allocation area, just based on legal descriptions. So those are cleanups. But the others are either in for reasons because there'll be utility expansion projects, roadway expansion projects, or other infrastructure improvement projects proposed over the next several years. So that's why those areas are being expanded. The question has become, why do that now? And part of that is because it's better when the redevelopment commission spends money in the TIF district or in the economic development area. While it can spend money serving the area, it's better if you're gonna do money or do projects that they be in the area themselves. Again, there's properties in the eastern area. Again, this is looking at improvements on Snowberry Road, State Road 2 corridor, some drainage improvements in that area. So there's tactical reasons why these are being added to, again, to the area because of improvements that need to be made in this area in the future. So the plan amendment that we're looking at would be 309 total parcels, 6,900 acres in total. So it is one of the bigger economic development areas in the county, but certainly not the biggest. Mishawaka's and South Bend's far exceed this in area and parcel count. The second reason we're looking to modify the allocation areas is really the principal driver of this whole project. So again, when we created allocation area 1 and allocation area number 2, both of those had dedicated lives when the areas would expire. Allocation area number 2 expires in 2041. And part of the challenge with that is when we sold a bond in 2016, you require about 22 years of life of an allocation area to sell a 20-year bond. And so if we were to sell a bond now for the GM project, the math doesn't work to get 22 years of life out of a bond being sold out of the area. So what we've looked to do is create allocation area number 3. Allocation area number 3 is for the GM site and it would service a bond for that area. So again, the way the boundaries were set up, we tried to leave as much allocation area 1 the same, tried to leave as much of allocation area number 2 the same, because we didn't want to take a cut in revenues to the larger whole. Allocation area number 3, again, would service the GM site and would be areas that generally aren't collecting revenue now, so that's why those areas were targeted. And then allocation area number 4 is really kind of the byproduct of drawn lines. For an area to stay contiguous, or for to all be connected, it has to stay contiguous. So when we look at the areas, the allocation area number 2 carves out, between allocation area number 2 and allocation area number 1, it carves out what becomes allocation area number 4. So allocation area number 4, though, also follows the lines of IEC Site 2. So again, some benefit in that just based on the way IEC Site 2 lays out, that sits now within allocation area number 4. So this is a representation of what that allocation area boundary, all 4 of those allocation area boundaries would look like under the new plan. And then lastly, modifying the acquisition list. So again, previously, when we did the 2016 plan, there were 19 parcels. We looked to add all the rest of the 290 parcels into the area. This gives us flexibility in property acquisition. The last property we acquired, the one at the southeast corner of Larison and Fillmore, and the one just south of that, we had to go through the Board of Commissioners to buy. There's less flexibility for the property owner to buy when we buy through the Board of Commissioners. There's not as much opportunity to negotiate on purchase price. So it actually is a more favorable condition if the Redevelopment Commission were to acquire the property. So again, 309 properties being added to the acquisition list. Again, by adding all the properties to the acquisition list, this is allowed and gave us the opportunity to provide notice to all the property owners of the meetings. So when we look at next steps, in the event that we're able to get through everything, then we really have to look at what it's going to take to meet the obligations of the GM project. So again, as we talk about selling a bond for the GM project, we need to create the bonding conditions. We need to create this new allocation area to make that work. Presently, we have, just again, earlier in the meeting today, we've continued to spend money out of the NCADA TIF funds to cover the different projects. Right now, we've spent committed about $8.8 million for projects. If you look at our budget, we're running kind of thin. If we want to get these bids in December, we're going to have to make some real decisions on how we cash flow, if we decide to award or if we wait to award until we sell a bond. So it becomes real tight. We have some very defined deadlines for projects. These are the deadlines specifically in the development agreement. So by June of next year, we have to have a sewer and water, initial water to the site. October, we have to have Fillmore Road improvements complete. December, we have to have sewer and secondary water brought to the site. And by October 2026, we have to have full water capacity. So we have some very delineated timelines. We have to meet those, or we run into some serious issues with default with General Motors on moving forward. If we approve the actions today, Shelley, can you give me a push forward, please? There we go. So if we approve the action today at the redevelopment commission, then tonight it'll go to the board of commission, or to the council for a final resolution vote. But this would be the calendar as we go forward. So the redevelopment commission has other items on its agenda today related to the sale of a bond, the bond actions that we'll be doing between us and the redevelopment authority. So there's a whole series of steps over the next couple of months to be able to do that. And then we'd look to close on bonds by February 29th. So there's not a lot of flex in this calendar to meet the requirements that we have to have. We have to have contractors on site in early March to meet those June requirements. Just the way the construction cycle is going to work. So we have worked with our partners to get this timeline as tight as we can, but we haven't along the way asked for special meetings. We haven't accelerated the process. We haven't done anything outside the realm to keep this moving. So we'd just like to kind of leave this as the last slide. If there's any questions about Resolution 2023-18, again, this is a resolution approving prior action taken when you did the declaratory resolution back in October. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 2023-18?
So moved.
Hey, Phil, does this need to be a public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have to open public hearing.
Okay, go ahead. So I guess apologize. We'll open the public hearing for this resolution. So anyone wanting to speak, are they limited to 3 minutes, Phil, Mr. Garrett?
3 minutes, yes.
Okay, so if anyone would like to come speak, please come to the podium, give us your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes to present information. Thank you.
No difference for or against this particular development, right? Just either side you want to hear from? Okay, well, I'm against. And I was at the meeting at New Carlisle. Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Jack Daly, John Daly. I live at 217 West Michigan Street in New Carlisle, and I've been there for about 20 years, so I'm a relative newcomer. I was at the meeting last night. That was, well, it was bandied about that it was going to be a chance to ask and get some answers to some questions that have been hanging over this project out my way pretty much since its inception. The crux of what I want to say is glossing over what happened last night prevents you from doing your due diligence. I question whether he's doing his due diligence for anybody but himself. My understanding of due diligence for a public servant or anybody being funded by the public is they do the due diligence for the good of the public. And this project is not. There were plenty of people there last night. You got 3 emails and 4 calls or vice versa. There were 150 people there last night because they have emailed and called and came and presented for years, and it just keeps rolling right along. Do not take for granted that this meeting last night was all blanks and giggles and we're all out of here and rah, rah, rah. There's big resistance to this. I live in New Carlisle. I'm like a block from downtown New Carlisle, but I'm considered an outsider. But it's going to impact me and already does very heavily with truck traffic, et cetera. I've got grandkids that I just brought here because I want them to live in this area, because it's a good one. But if you don't do your due diligence on what these people are trying to accomplish in a very slipshod way, then that endangers what I see as the real value. I'll just add one more point to chew on. This expansion that they're doing now, they sold us on 3,000 acres, okay? Now that's become 6,900 acres. And again, that figure 22,000 acres has reared its ugly head. When do we get to talk about that? Except for 3 minutes. All right, heads up.
Thank you.
Good morning, Dan Caruso, 305 East Compton Street, New Carlisle. I was at that meeting last night, and I got to tell you, anybody that was there knows there were a lot of angry, I mean, not, I'll keep it clean, angry property owners in that area, not understanding why they have moved into this rural community, they've built their homes there, only to be told that, guys, at some point in the future, maybe, maybe not. Don't get too comfortable. We're going to be coming after your property. I think that would irritate me too. I'm on the fringes of it. Abby Wiles was always saying she was more worried about something called urban sprawl coming over towards us. She said that was what worried her the most. Call this industrial creep. There's the 2,400 acres that, according to the 2002 comp plan of the core area, which is supposed to be the end all of industrial development in the area until the new comp plan is in place. We don't have a new comp plan. We're dragging our feet on the comp plan. Both the town is, we're working on ours. The county seems to be sitting on theirs waiting for this stuff to develop. The comp plan that exists today says no movement of the core area, of the economic development area beyond the core of 2,400 acres under the current comp plan. So until we get a new comp plan, you're putting the cart before the horse. You have to have the comp plan in place to allow this expansion. You can't expand and then adjust the comp plan when you get around to it. There are so many things that aren't thought of here. The building of anything there, it's a whole other issue, but they're talking of a trailer park, basically, turning Mini Mountain Campground into a trailer park to house the workers for this area. And in talking to Dr. White from the superintendent of New Prairie Schools, our schools are at capacity. Where are these people bringing their kids in to live in this campground, going to send their kids? And there are kids already living there that go to school in New Carlisle. There's a bus stop every day, dropping kids off and picking kids up to take them to the high school. So before we get a comp plan in place, it is just not very smart to do it in this order. You have to get the comp plan in place first, and then you talk about this. But right now, the comp plan says no expansion of the industrial area beyond 2,400 acres. We are there. No more expansion. Thank you.
The name is Bob Humbarger. I live at 29987 Hurd Road, Olive Township. And I was at the fiasco of the so-called public hearing last night. I don't know how you can call it a public hearing. You couldn't hear anything that it was being presented, and you couldn't hear any questions. It was a big conglomeration of people milling around, being very angry. So the fact that the public hearing was held the night before this meeting too is a bit of a problem, because there is no time to prepare for this brief 3 minutes. And when you only have 3 minutes, you need to prepare. I filed a resolution last night, or yesterday at 3 o'clock. I met the deadline. There was no mention. They said they had their emails and they had the phone calls, but there was no mention about the resolution. And I spent several days in my effort to try to present my objections to this proposal. And what bothers me the most is the expansion of the thing, taking in one of my agricultural fields, and limits decisions that I have made in the past and spent capital improvement money on in order for my plans in the future, which are now down the drain. And I'm mad as hell, and I apologize for getting that, but I don't have anything more to say because I can't keep a civil mouth thing in my brain. Thank you.
I would note, as Bob mentioned, Bob did file a notice of remonstrance, and so that was circulated yesterday and again included in your papers today. So, and that will be forwarded on to council for their action tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Steve Francis, Judy Lake Drive up in North County area. I was there last night. I'm not going to spend time on that, but yeah, it was a little more, less sterile than you've heard. Lots of angry people, lots of people opposed to the expansion. They felt that they've been sold a bill of goods, that the core, what we hear about is the core industrial area of about 3,000 acres south of Ion Tech was where industry was going to go, and that was only a portion of the existing EDA, and now they're faced with letters saying that they're on an acquisition list. This is really a premature land grab, I think, to some extent. My head's swimming. I mean, there's EDA 1, 2, 3, now 4, IEC 1 and 2. This is another 1,500 acre expansion of the EDA. And we all know that once the EDA is established, then it becomes fair game for anybody to come in and say, I want that, I would like that property to build upon. And it's Bill Shalio's job and your job to see how you can make that happen. I understand that. But it's really concerning when we're told that a development agreement with the battery plant is contingent upon you approving this expansion of the EDA, and the council going on tonight to approve it, that you have to approve it because we have an agreement and a cash flow problem. That's a financial management and agreement problem that I think you need to wrestle with. I think this is the first public hearing. This has been rushed through, as you know, in 3 weeks. You had a special hearing 3 weeks ago where you approved the declaratory resolution, no public hearing. The Board of Commissioners, no public hearing. Area Plan Commission, no public hearing. On the last day, there's a public hearing here and a public hearing tonight. And the night before was the only public meeting out there, and it was very hostile to this. You should be aware of that. If any one of you weren't there, I have to ask why not. You need to be aware and involved on the ground level with the people that you're impacting when you make decisions for the RDC. So I ask for this. Send this back to Bill Shalio and the Department of Economic Development to rework it. You can rework it within the existing EDA to adjust the allocation areas, to adjust the TIFs, in a way that would allow you to bond out and raise funds. You don't need to go out and grab more land, which is what people are very upset with. I would also ask that you define that area for what is the industrial growth out there. It was supposed to be confined to north of 2, south of 20, Larison and Willow, to 3,000 acres. The battery plant will take up 100 to 200 acres, even though they bought 800. So please send this back, table it. Thank you.
Here we have someone.
Chris Barnaby. I live at 31486 US Highway 20. The impact to the community with these expansions, I'm not totally opposed to, but the impact to the environment, battery plant, the energy plant was built, is literally in my backyard. I spoke with Mr. Shalio last night. When they built the energy plant, they pumped water off the aquifer. I don't know how many million gallons. There was an 8-inch pipe. There was a lake. My house settled, my neighbor's house settled, several people's wells went dry, and I made repeated phone calls to Mr. Shalio. This was 6 years ago when they were getting the stamping plant in. Now, Selge Construction had come in and torn the road up, Walnut and 20. It's right next to the energy plant. My house was built in 1870, have an old fieldstone foundation. Came home from work one day, cracks all the way around my foundation. I made several phone calls, emails to Mr. Shalio, got no response. And with the battery plant going in, I don't know if that's gonna be the access road coming in. That's my personal opinion of it. And if they're moving in any more industry in here, like I said, I would appreciate a phone call back. Just direct damage to my property, and now the county wants to put in an acquisition to buy it. That's fine with me, because I patched it myself. I had $35,000 estimate to do it. But my taxes have gone up every single year, and can't get a phone call back from our economic development company who organized this whole situation. So I didn't hear, or I didn't know, wasn't a very good excuse, Mr. Salio.
Thank you. Is there anyone online, by the way, who would like to speak? Not that people here are precluded from doing so.
Oh, I may add that I lost property. They came in, bought the easement, I didn't get paid back. They expanded the road a whole extra.
No one online? Would anyone else like to speak?
Is there anyone online who'd like to speak? Please use the raise hand feature.
So we should close the public comment?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I tapped. I'm on a different device today, but I tapped. I'm sorry. My name is Mary Countryman. Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Mary Countryman, 52959 Timothy Road, New Carlisle. I'm wondering, where are the people on the target acquisition list supposed to go? Think of trying to find a new home, a new property to build, a replacement home, all with the cost of resale or real estate and new building supplies. It would be similar to if any of you have ever totaled your car and then you tried to get a replacement for that car. You're offered what the car is worth in others' eyes, but there is no way possible to get a replacement for that money. Land and property, there's very few for sale. There's a shortage right now. And if this passes, you'll be contributing to those who've paid their property taxes for years only to be made homeless. Are you okay with that? Please say no to the expansion of the NCEDA, the New Carlisle Environmental Disaster Area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else online? Seeing none, Mr. Jordan, you can close the public
Okay.
hearing.
So we will close the public hearing at this point. Can we entertain motion 2023-18?
You can entertain a motion on 2023-18.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Mr. Goebel,
Aye.
Mr. Horvath,
Aye.
and Mr. Jordan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
So for the next three items, resolution number 2023-19, 2023-20, and the lease agreement, we'll use, I'd ask Phil Facenda to address those three agenda items for us, please.
Members of the commission, Phil Facenda, Barnes & Thornburg, 201 South Main Street, South Bend. So these items, the reimbursement, I'm trying to make sure I've got which one we're looking at here. Okay. The reimbursement resolution is essentially, as has been previously mentioned, there is a bond financing, which will be a lease financing. I think we've addressed that previously with the Redevelopment Commission. The lease financing will have as the leasing entity the county's redevelopment authority. The Redevelopment Commission will enter into a lease, and through that leasing a mechanism, will pay lease rental to the redevelopment authority, and the redevelopment authority then turns around and uses the lease rental to pay debt service on the bonds. So when we go to issue the bonds, it'll be the redevelopment authority that'll be the issuing entity. These will be tax exempt bonds, and as tax exempt bonds, there's a requirement under the federal tax code that if you're going to seek to reimburse prior expenditures that are part of the project from tax exempt bonds, then you need to declare your intent to do so. The redevelopment commission is a proper entity to do so. So that's what this resolution does. So Bill Shallow has addressed prior expenditures that have been made with regard to the project. And when those bonds are issued, hopefully by late February, there will be a line item for reimbursement for expenditures of the redevelopment commission to be reimbursed by the bonds. This reimbursement resolution allows the reimbursement through tax exempt bonds. So that's what the resolution is. I'm happy to take any questions on that resolution. Do you want me to, Bill, address the other items as well, or and vote on them separately? Okay. As I mentioned to you, the redevelopment authority structure is going to require a lease. That draft lease is in your materials. It is not yet finalized, but we do have some provisions in there, like a maximum lease rental, which is disclosed as $5 million annually in the lease. The bonds will be in an amount not to exceed $50 million. And this is all in connection with the various infrastructure projects that you're all aware of that are part and parcel of the GM battery plant project. So as part of our process to approve those bonds and the lease is an approval by this body of the lease, of the form of the lease. And that's what the second resolution is, the 2023-20. It's simply the approval, the preliminary approval of the lease. From here, you saw that in the prior presentation that Bill gave that there are additional steps. So there will be additional steps. We will be coming back to this body again. And this body will then formally approve entering into the lease and will execute the lease. And the redevelopment authority will do so as well. That is a future item on our calendar, but this is the initial step. Any questions about that? I'm happy to answer them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Resolution 2023-19. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Garrett?
Motion and a second. Mr. Goble?
Aye.
Mr. Horvath?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Motion carries.
For Resolution 2023-20, do we have to separately approve the lease agreement, or is just the resolution?
It's all under the resolution.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2023-20?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? No?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Goble?
Aye.
Mr. Horvath?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a professional service agreement. We're seeking approval of a professional service agreement from Christopher B. Burke Engineering to provide pre-demolition services for a residential property located at 14390 Douglas Road in Mishawaka. The county closed on that property as of November 2nd of 2023. The fee for this project shall not exceed $12,000. Staff requests Commission's approval for this agreement. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
No. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Just a question before, how does this compare to the one that we voted on earlier?
The fee was $12,000 for the other one also.
So same
Same
sort
fee.
of structure?
Same fee, yeah, same service, same
Okay.
fee.
Yep. Second?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Goble?
Aye.
Mr. Horvath?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And then, I guess, under Northwest Cleveland Road Economic Development Area, we wanted to let you know that a project has been filed, a new project, Holiday Properties, in partnership, hopefully with Lippert. They're finalizing their agreement, their contracts, has been filed for a tax abatement. We hope to see that move through in December. But it's a 800,000 square foot building, 100 employees, about $50 million in new investment. So that would sit within the economic development area on the southern side of the road across from General Stamping and Metalworks. That property was brought in for a future project. This will take up the entire acreage on the south side of the road, so. just thought we'd-
Approximately 52 acres.
Yeah, so just thought we'd give you a heads up of that project moving forward. And then no other updates at this time.
Is there any additional business? Okay. Now we'll again go to public comment. As before, if you'd like to speak, you're limited to 3 minutes. Please give your name and your address. Seeing none here, is there anyone online? Mr. Garrett?
If anyone wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, Mr. Jordan, a motion to adjourn would be appropriate.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second?
A motion, a second, Mr. Goble,
Aye.
Mr. Horvath,
Aye.
and Mr. Jordan.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.